tail end of the meeting? Okay. Moving along. At this point in time, we'll transition to our recognition portion of the meeting. We'll hear a report from John Feltus, our student representative.
Hello, my name is John Feltus. I'm the student representative for Littleton Schools, and I have some updates to give. The Shaker Lane last week, they had their first school safety drill. They thank Officer Wudzinski and Detective Fernandez for their assistance with the drill. On Monday, Shaker Lane will have their Halloween parade. They look forward to having a community meeting sing along and then parade around the building for families to enjoy viewing. The students in their costumes. Be on the lookout for Mrs. Kane and staff in their special costumes. At the Russell Street, they are busy with map testing at all grade levels on Tuesday and Wednesday. All classes had their first Alice safety procedure discussion, and they will have an evacuation drill in the coming weeks. Of course, the plans for Halloween celebrations are underway. Students and staff are excited to have some fun afternoon activities on Monday. At the middle school, Littleton Middle School will be having their annual 7th and 8th grade dance on Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. They hope to see everyone there. At the high school on November 4th is photo retake day. On the 8th is no school because of election day. On the 10th, term 1 grades closed. Also on the 10th is Susan Sweet's band fundraiser at 7 p.m. On the 16th, there will be an all-school assembly. And on the 19th and 20th, the drama production Astroface the Birds will be at 1 p.m. At L Littleton.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Good job. Dr. Clench, anything additional?
Sure, I have a couple. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our fall athletic coaches, both district and town-wide. We're fortunate in this community to have outstanding coaches in the district and the town, and our children in this community have incredible opportunities to choose what kind of sport they would like to pursue. So certainly very worthy of mentioning, since we're going to be tying up the season pretty soon here. Hard to believe it's November around the corner. Thank you to all the coaches. Very much appreciated. Second acknowledgement. We had a VAX clinic last night, very well attended. In fact, we extended the hours from 3 to 7 instead of 5 to 7. And we have another VAX clinic scheduled for November 1st. The slots opened up today. And 2 more are scheduled in November. November 15th, we have another one, and November 29th. So, nice to see more people taking advantage of it. As the weather gets a little colder, I think our business will pick up as well. So,
is it safe to assume that the expanded hours are a response to demand? Like people want to get?
Yes, yeah. And last acknowledgement, we had our connections evening last night, and I'd like to thank everybody involved in organizing the program and all the teachers that came out to present. And it was a great evening, lots of good topics that were certainly applicable to our families in town. And we look forward to doing another one. And it's just nice to be able to offer things like this to connect with our families.
Sure. I planned on trying to make that, of course, but I was doing the coaching thing instead. So
that's what I thought.
It was double booked. What was the turnout like?
Well, maybe 30, 40 minutes ago. Between 30 and 40.
Okay. So enough that we would look to continue with the type of programming. I mean, we had it last fall, right?
Yeah, we probably
Got it as an annual.
We had over
we're doing it twice a year.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So I think that we'd like to do it once a year. The feedback that we received in May when we offered it the first time was the preference was to have it at the beginning of the school year, but we're getting back into it.
Sure.
So I think twice a year might be too much.
Mm.
And so yeah, just like one a year.
I mean, it's always difficult to find an evening that works for everybody. Everybody's so busy. So the first time we offered it, obviously, was an evening that more people had time to come out to attend. So.
I was able to stop by and again appreciate everybody who was involved in planning and executing it. It was the parking lot was full. Maybe they're only coming one in the carpool, but it seemed to be a really good turnout, and I know people appreciated it. Our personal family experience was that it the last one was so successful, people had kind of checked some boxes and gotten the answers they wanted. So maybe there was a little slightly lower turnout because of that. But I think it's great that we did it and appreciate those who worked on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally support it. We gotta find a way to find that magical night when most people can make it, which is impossible.
Well, when you're coaching, it's tough to find that time.
Okay, I'll sit there. All right, we'll move on to the presentation portion of the meeting. We're gonna mix the schedule up just a little bit here. So we're gonna start with what was to be the third presentation. So that'll be standard 2 professional development goal 1. Director of Teaching and Learning, Mrs. Steele, and Superintendent Clenchey will provide an overview of the 2022-2023 district and school professional development plan. And of note, Jen did join us into plan, so did she?
Jen's good.
Oh, okay.
Good.
All right. Great. Welcome.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
All right. So happy to share with everyone this evening the plan that has been set forth for this school year based on the time and schedule that was set last year.
All right, I'll get it. Hold on a second.
No worries. So each year we collect feedback, we evaluate, we reflect upon what we're doing, where we want to be going, and how we can get there. And so we try to have 1 or 2 focus areas that as a district we all encompass and push forward together with. And we try and have those 1 or 2 focus areas last a few years in order for us to really understand the concepts that are at play here, but more than just understand, be able to actually use and implement them within our classrooms and have it kind of become an innate part of what we do on a daily basis. And so our focus areas for the past year or 2 and this year moving forward, as you can see on the slide here, are UDL, that Universal Design for Learning that we have heard mentioned several times over the past year. And the second focus area is culturally responsive teaching practices. Again, another that we have been focused on for the past year to 2 years, actually. Those are our big kind of umbrella goal areas. But it's important to note that those are not the only 2 topics of PD. As we all know, there's a lot happening, a lot goes on within our schools. And so those are our 2 big overarching, but there's a lot happening at even just the grade level and the department levels and content-wise. So in addition, and this is not an exhaustive list, but just a few examples of, in addition to our overarching goals for focus areas, we also have professional development on our elementary writing curriculum, our elementary math curriculum. World Language just updated their standards in 2021 from DESE. The arts just updated their standards recently as well from DESE. We're implementing foundations at various grade levels. And we're also working on social emotional learning continuously, which has been for several years now as well. So it's just important to acknowledge we have overarching goals that we try and blend through everything that we do, but there's a lot happening as well at the same time. So on the next, before we jump to the next, I think what's important to understand about PD and what DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, when they speak of PD, two words kind of come up a lot: embedded and ongoing. And so that's what, when we do our planning and we sit and we reflect about our PD, we think about how can we embed this into what we do, and how can we make it ongoing. I think a lot of us have sat through one and done things. It might be meetings with topics at work that are no longer applicable the next day, right? Or you just don't hear about it again. And while those have a time and place, one and done PD sessions can have a time and place, really what we're looking for is that ongoing factor to make sure that we go beyond just the level of understanding to be able to implement and use that. So on the next 2 slides, we actually see a roadmap of our PD plan. So as we know, we have 12 early release professional development days built into the calendar throughout the year. Those 12 days are split. We have into 3 buckets. So 2 of them are in a district-based bucket. 4 of them are in a building-based bucket. And then 6 of them are in a faculty-led bucket. And so with that, it's all based on kind of who's facilitating, who's leading, who's putting on the professional development, right? So 2 come from the district, 4 come from building administrators, and then 6 actually come from within our own educators. So you can see here, what we try and do is actually blend our building-based with our district-based throughout the fall. And then we are very conscious to put together the 6 faculty-led days to be consecutive days in order for our faculty to kind of dive into whatever they have proposed for their professional development, to allow them to kind of get on that role and maintain that without being having a distraction partway through on another topic.
By consecutive days, I'm sorry, you just mean the fact that PD happens, that those all happen in a row, but not Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Exactly. So there's 6 half days together,
Gotcha,
starting
gotcha.
December 7th, going through March 1st.
Thank
you. And then the X here marks the spot for our cross-district professional development. That is our 1 full day. It's election day where we collaborate with 2 other districts. So that's the first half of the year, the roadmap, and then the next slide has the second half of the year. Again, you see the faculty led, we're kind of bunched together, building based, actually, and our what ends the year for the PD. So now actually diving into what does the actual plan for this year look like? What does it say? PD starts, as we all know, we try to embed it and we try to make it ongoing. So it actually started on day 1 when our staff came back on September 6th. So we had a keynote by Dr. Katie Novak, who is considered as being an expert with regards to UDL and MTSS. And so we had Katie come and provide the keynote to our staff to start us off and to kick us off. She also has kind of a contagious energy. So she was a good upbeat on the first day back of school. And so during that keynote, she really explained kind of what is MTSS, what it is not, and how UDL is part of that MTSS, the system that is MTSS. And so it was a great kickoff, and it kind of then was a preview for one of the potential options for staff to take as PD during those district-based days. So this year, for our district-based PD days, remember there's only 2 of them, right? They're the district-based days. The first was in September 28th, the second is next week. When we talk about our district-based PD, we want it to be we want to demonstrate and actually put into practice what we're talking about and what we're trying to have educators understand and learn and turn around and do themselves, right? So we try and walk the walk as we're kind of teaching and talking it, so that way people can see that it can be done, right? So with that in mind, we created pathways this year for our district-based PD days. And so there were 3 options for staff to pick from, allowing for some choice as to where they wanted to go, right? So the 3 options are listed here on the screen for you. The first is the culturally responsive teaching, and that is the early adopters group. So that is PD actually with an organization called Effective X that we actually found through DESE. DESE partners with them. And so we kind of did our own research with them, had some conversations, and decided that we as a district also wanted to partner with them. And so this is their early adopters. So that's a small cohort. There's a couple of representatives from every building that are joining consultants from Adaptive X to really dive into culturally responsive practices. What does that look like? What does that mean? How can they engage in that within classrooms? The second pathway option is a UDL with a Novak educational consultant. And so that's what I was saying. Katie kind of previewed that on day 1 of what that could potentially look like and the topics that they would dive into during that. We've had Tara Trainer, who's a consultant with Novak Educational Consulting, come and on these days, I want to split myself. Haven't figured out how to do that yet, because I always want to be in multiple places at once, and we just can't be. But I did hear rave reviews about the first session on the 28th with Tara with regards to UDL. Our educators were able to bring lessons and actually dive into those lessons and look at, their lesson through a UDL lens with a UDL expert and have conversations about it. So we are looking forward to having Tara come back next week. But I say I want to split myself because the third district pathway is the district run cultural responsive teaching. And Jason Everhart, Littleton Middle School principal, thank you, Jason, and I are actually facilitating that pathway together ourselves. And so that one is for teachers that are interested in diving into culturally responsive teaching practices, what that looks like, what that means, but they're not our early adopters. So they're not the ones that are like 100% on board. The early adopters is a larger commitment. It's a more time commitment. Whereas the culturally responsive teaching with Jason and I is kind of that first step into that pathway. So those are the three pathways. We asked teachers on the 28th to pick one of the three pathways and stick with it for both of the 28th and November 2nd, again, so that there could be ongoing PD. They're sticking with the same idea and kind of revisiting it and rethinking it. So that is our, with regards to the half days district based. And then on our next slide, the other full district PD day is that cross district PD day. We hear about it every year. We do love it. It holds a special place in our heart. A lot happens on this day and a lot goes into this day. We are excited that it is coming up on November 8th on election day. We are again working with Air Shirley and Harvard to make this day happen. We have invited Ken Williams to be our keynote speaker. He is founder of an organization called Unfold the Soul, and equity is his focus area, and equity in every sense of the word, not specific to just racial equity, but equity all around. And so we're excited to have Ken Williams join us as the speaker for that day. And then you'll see, again, embedded ongoing. So we're maintaining themes that we have seen in the past. We're maintaining UDL, we're maintaining equity, SEL, trauma-informed practices, and innovation. And what is maybe the, I don't know if I should say most exciting, but a very exciting part of this day is that we're going back to in-person. So the past couple of years we have been remote. And what's funny is that the last time this event was in person was 3 years ago, and Littleton hosted it. And so every year we just take turns hosting, and it happens to be our turn again. So we're excited to be hosting this day in person at the high school. So we are still in the final planning stages and looking forward to kind of spread information out early next week about this thing. That's the district level, the 2 half days, 1 full day of PD. And then remember, we have 4 of our early release days that are building based. And so building based means that this is when our building administrators are able to really think about what direction they want their school to move in and how they can get their school to move in that direction. And so it allows them the freedom to create PD that is specific to their teachers in their building and the grade levels that they work with. And so this year, you can see here the list of where every school is kind of focused. I will say that Shaker Lane and Russell Street, big thanks to Cheryl Temple and Michelle Payne, who have volunteered their building-based PD days really to be focused on the implementation of our new map and our relatively new training programs. And so all of the PD that our K-5 educators are participating in this year are related to the curriculum and new content that we're having. Middle school is focusing on, we heard Jason say, bringing back the joy in learning. And part of that is the idea of building relationships, right? And doing that and reviewing their advisory, having that new advisory program, developing team and school identity, and then establishing new school traditions. And then at the high school, they're also continuing at the school level with the UDL, looking at UDL and activities and how it's implemented within their classrooms. They're also looking at their new, because they have a relatively new schedule and a new platform for the way that they use their advisory. And so looking at that and how they use that effectively. And then also a continuation from last year of the staff wellness and collaboration. So those 4 days, school administrators really have the opportunity to kind of harness and take hold of how they want those PD days to look. And then finally, that third bucket that we have, right? So we've done the district, we've done the schools. That third bucket on the next slide is the faculty led. And so our faculty led is half of our PD. We want our educators to focus in and be able to look at our overarching goals and how can they blend what they really want to focus in on with those overarching goals. And so we invite our faculty. We're excited to have it back this year. We took it away last year because we were hoping to take something off of our educators' plates by having, because they facilitate this PD. It's work on them to come up with an idea to then create and facilitate PD, right? So we were thinking we took something off their plate back last year, and we're excited, and so are the educators, to have that back this year. And so we're actually right now in the middle of going through the faculty-led process. So we have 2 due dates that we asked for educators to submit proposals. We just today actually shared out the information from the first due date of the proposals that were approved. And now our educators will, if they like what they see, they can sign up for something that's already listed. If there is nothing listed that they're particularly interested in, or they feel like they have a different passion that they want to go, then they can submit a proposal to the Professional Development Committee or the Professional Development Council, and we will review it. And then we will come up with a final list before our first faculty-led PD day, which is in early December. So just to give you an idea of what has been approved already for this year, and just to kind of give you an idea of where our educators are at. So already approved faculty-led PD this year include IEP writing boot camp, implementing new practices from the procedural guide in the Allen Bloom workshops that our special education department put on last spring. Another one, reading and writing curriculum vertical planning, math curriculum development and review along with vertical alignment, world language curriculum framework modules that were put together and produced by DESE. 6 to 12 is going to work on a science curriculum review, the new math program, a methodology implementation, an SCI book study, and then also what already been approved, a yoga for classrooms, trauma-informed practices for SEL, student success, and positive engagement. So just to kind of give you an idea of where our educators are at for those faculty-led activities. So those are the 3 buckets in which our PD falls. The next slide, the last informational slide here is the calendar. We already saw this on the roadmap. If the roadmap was split into 2 slides. This sometimes we like just a straight list of here are the dates, this is the time frame of that PD, and then the type of PD that it is. So that is our PD plan for this year. Thank you for letting us share it with you all.
Thanks for all the information. Questions, comments from the committee?
So I feel like we've learned a lot, and I feel like I know a lot about UBL with all the very concrete examples we heard. Can you give examples of what culturally responsive professional development, like what tools and strategies are they learning and then bring back to the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give you exact examples from what Jason and we actually just met this morning to finalize our plans for next week. So our first on that September 28th, we wanted staff that joined our PD to know that culturally responsive practices are good general practices. And so it's not just one specific thing that you might think of, okay, well, how do you ask someone how, we just had Diwali, right? We just celebrated that. So, oh, you celebrate Diwali. Tell the class about it, right? It's not just that, right? There's so much more that goes into it. And so our first PD on the 28th, we started just kind of with defining what does culturally responsive practice look like. And we talked about being warm demanders and going into what is a warm demander, right? And having high expectations, but also demonstrating that you're a person, we're doing human work, right? And so you have to be very real and know who we're working with. And so we went from kind of this idea of warm demander, what does that mean? What does that look like? How can we implement being a warm demander? We kind of then shifted to identity and knowing ourselves, right? We have to know ourselves and know those that are in the room in order to be able to engage and interact with them. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we're headed next week, is kind of going further into that identity, knowing ourselves and then knowing the others that are sharing the space with us. Mm-hmm. And the value in that directly related to, now that I know myself, I know the biases that I might have as an individual, I now know ways that I can get to know the people around me. How does that directly impact my teaching? Mm-hmm. Right? So what can I do to be aware of those strategies for directly impacting my teaching? Mm-hmm. So that's very specific to the PD that we're doing. But I will say the Adaptive X, the early adopters, had a similar theme on their first PD as well.
Yeah. So there's like an overlap. I was thinking bias and whether like that comes into it. There's some overlap there as well.
Oh, definitely. at times when we introduce new initiatives, people have a tendency to look at it in terms of the silo effect.
Yeah.
And everything is interlinked. Social emotional learning, trauma informed instruction. There are no silos because everything connects. And it really, in the end, ends up in good quality teaching that reaches all students.
Yeah.
But you have to put a label on them because there are certain things that are specific to that, but most of them interlink and overlap.
Yeah, it's like a lens almost, right?
Right.
To you
Right.
to self-reflect. And I appreciate that sort of concrete because culturally responsive, as you know, is like this very big now buzz term, but it's really helpful to sort of narrow down on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask a follow-up question? I really appreciate that. It mirrors what we do in School of Education at Salem State. But we also get into actual curriculum decisions. It's not only about understanding the perspective that I bring to the classroom, which perspectives my students might have. It's also about choosing this source, not this source, having this discussion, not that discussion. I'm wondering if this is at kind of a district or even a building level, are some of these faculty-led discussions, or is that when the ELA team is talking about this, the math team is talking about this, where they're really, is that, help me, I think I understand the
Yeah.
schema. That's like, this is the big picture. This is what we're trying to do.
Exactly.
What does it look like in a math classroom? What does it look like in an elementary school classroom? What does it look like in a history classroom? Is that the kind of work that's being done?
Exactly. Yeah, that's
Okay.
exactly. So the overarching goal, we're providing this general picture, right? And then being able to have, and I know that Jason has team-based conversations too, right? Of what this looks like as a team, as a seventh grade team, for seventh grade, students, what does this look like? And then curriculum wise as well. So then when we come together and do our curriculum reviews, that is part of the conversation.
It is that. You said there's the understanding part. Hey, let's make sure we're conceptual and we're using these terms in the same way. But the embedding, it seems to me, in the classroom instruction, and not only the way the teacher approaches it, but so that's what we're talking about here. Is like these seventh grade teams or the curriculum teams talking about how do you actually do this?
Yeah.
That's work being done. Okay.
Yeah, and I think the work, a perfect avenue for that work to be done is through the faculty led. And that's what we see a lot actually coming into play here. So for example, the math review, right? Part of their proposal was specifically looking at their curriculum and are they using the UDL lens, right? Are they using a culturally responsive lens? How can they ensure that their curriculum is reflecting, the overarching ideas that we're having?
Can I just
Sure.
add one thing, Brad, that you reminded me of, because it's one part of it is definitely curriculum, and I think one part of it is also day-to-day practices, and I'm sure you talk about it too, but this is something I talked about in my interview, like pronouncing names and eye contact and all of that sort of also falls into
Exactly. And so we're talking about curriculum, content instruction, and also general pedagogy.
Okay.
Right. And so it is the two, I think, frequently we blend together, right? Particularly at our older grades, because they happen to naturally blend together frequently. But both of those, we talk about how are we looking through particular lenses in both those areas.
And that's where it gets, if I may, to what Kelly was saying earlier about, social emotional learning and having a welcoming school culture. So, when you meet with the DEI club, you hear that sometimes this is working, sometimes it's not, or hasn't been over the years, or and so there's certainly a need for this, and I'm glad it's one of our pro side. I keep stepping on it, sorry.
No.
Stacey, anything? Any questions,
I
comments?
love what the overall theme you guys have with all the PD. It seems like it's very integrated and just it aligns a lot with obviously the goals that the district has for the kids socially and emotionally and culturally, which I love that. And so I think the only question that I had, a common theme is I always want just like a little bit more data and information is, do you guys have any insight to like the example of the PD topics, like how many teachers are being involved in like the book club versus SEI versus like looking at student work? Do you guys know how that's being distributed amongst the students, and could you share any of that with us?
How it's being distributed amongst the students.
I mean, amongst the teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, what activities are most popular with the teachers? What are they gravitating to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have that data yet because the information just went out today. But what we do have is we share out that data. There is a sign up document. And so we ask that everyone sign up by December 5th, which is, the Monday before the first Wednesday of that PD.
Yep.
And so we are then able, and then we do track attendance because we also provide professional development points, PB points for our staff to be able, right? Because that's the other big piece of for recertification purposes as well, of being able to have them focus on what they want and what they need to be in. And so we do track who's attending what session. And so we are able to kind of see sessions that people gravitate more towards. And it's interesting because sometimes it is, like I already know people have already reached out to me. I mean, email went out just this afternoon. People have already reached out and said, I'm really interested in, our elementary right now are already really interested in that yoga for kids, that yoga for classrooms one, which really ties together a positive classroom environment as well as SEL skills, as well as the elementary math one. And so those ones I can already tell are going to be kind of popular amongst the elementary level, but that's just based on some anecdotal. We will have the official signups and all of that once we get underway.
What's been really rewarding to look at over time, when we first restructured PD in this district, it was about 50% district oriented and 50% school oriented. And as we develop skill sets, efficiencies, and expertise, you can see we still have the umbrella PD that aligns with everything that everybody's doing. That's important, but we've involved more staff in the process. We all know that if you use train the trainer model, you're actually teaching other staff members, it's working, and it's influencing what's happening in our classroom. So we're at a real good spot in this district in terms of where we are with PD. That doesn't happen overnight. It takes years of planning, and, making sure that we identify people that are leaders in that area as well and help develop those skills so that they can impact. When I look at Heidi McGregor, who started out as our technology integration specialist, and she started presenting in other districts and our tri-district PD day. Now she's president of MassQ. And it's incredible to see, somebody like Heidi go from a classroom teacher to a technology integration specialist. And then she's actually speaking on an international stage. Very rewarding.
Jen, I don't want to leave you out since you're zooming in, but do you have any comments or questions?
All that. No comments, no questions at all. It's all great stuff. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Surprisingly enough, I have comments and questions. I love talking about curriculum stuff. I want to Stacy's point. I also like these posts. But I'm wondering how we choose them and how do we, UDL we've heard a lot about over the last couple of years. I know it's not a fad, but it's an innovation in education. How long does this need to be a focus for us? And how do we know when we've kind of checked that box?
Yeah, so I would envision us focusing for at least another year. Because I think the other thing that a lot of times happens with Universal Design for Learning is that we think we're doing it because we provide two choices.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's absolutely part of UDL. But it's actually, there's so much more to it. And so that's why we are going to focus like 3 to 5 years on Universal Design for Learning, because it takes that time. If we were just doing surface level, then I would anticipate instead of everyone's going to read this book, you can read it or you can audio, right? Very surface level. We want to go deeper than surface level. And so that's why we focus on it for several years. And we end up, you hear a lot about it because our educators are excited by it, right? They're excited not only by how that can change their teaching in the classroom, but how it actually changes the learning that's happening in the classroom. And so an indicator for us is that when we're walking around and we're having conversations, is that we are seeing it fully embedded and just continuous throughout. And so, and what I think will kind of naturally happen is that the spark of conversation will start to slowly fade because it's no longer a new, right? We have it so embedded that it just feels very innate. And that's when we then shift, right? And by that point, I'm sure there will be, something else that kind of takes our attention. But at this point, I don't feel ready, and I've had the conversation with Dr. Clunchy, we don't feel ready to move on from UDL at this point. We're still digging into the deeper levels.
I really like that answer because, I've got a foot in some of these conversations and it takes a long time. And Jason and I were talking beforehand and says, I have no doubt that our teachers can, and think of the CAP forms or DESI forms, we could hit the quality, it's the scope of the consistency. And so it's not just you have those 1 or 2 lessons when the curriculum director is coming by or the principal's coming by, but that's part of every day. And I think that takes a while. Let me ask a related question. You mentioned, I wrote it down because it struck me. We're talking about for the culture responsive teaching, the early adopters, I think, are there. And my sense is they're probably will be help leading, if they're taking that much of a leadership role, they'll be leading some faculty development later on.
Exactly.
Okay. But you also mentioned those who were not early adopters, but also like choosing that PD as kind of first steps. And if I'm really comfortable with the idea that we're doing UDL already in a lot of the places, I'd also like to think that people aren't taking their first step in culture responsive teaching. And I wonder if you could talk about how this isn't the first year that's been a focus for us. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, before you use the first step.
Okay.
I fully admit my mistake there. So it's not that it's a first step. I will say it is another step in that direction.
Okay,
It's not that it's the first step because we have focused on cultural responsiveness for a couple of years. 2 years ago, we had Dr. Khalees Warna, and she was kind of our first dive into the cultural responsiveness, cultural proficiency realm. That was our first step, right? And so now we're kind of each choice that we make moving forward is another step in that direction. And so I apologize for my first step that was a misstep on my
No,
part.
I just
It's just another step moving forward in that direction because you're totally right. They are both. We're working very hard to embed both of them, and they are embedded already in some areas, right? We're at varying levels. We're like our students. Some things can come quickly to some people and not as quickly to others, right? And so we're working on both of them.
thank you. I assumed that was the case, but I wanted to clarify, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
My final question.
It's not dissimilar to technology integration in the classroom.
Yeah.
We have people that are at the forefront and we want to support them as they continue to integrate technology. But we have people that are at various spots. So we tier the instruction to the audience that we have. I do have a comment about the check mark. And I don't know if the check mark is ever completed. I mean, when we move on to something else, it's because what we were working on becomes who we are as an organization. But as you're fully aware, we have staff changes like every organization does. Yep. And it's very important for us as leaders to identify when we need to re-inject more structure than UDL instruction because of the turnover of staff. I don't know if it's ever completely checked off, to be honest.
No, but it's foreground, background
Right.
kind of conversations. Can I ask one more question?
Sorry.
So I really love this. I love the structure, and I love, like Stacey said, the explanation of it. I really, it makes sense to me that we begin with the district, then we go to the buildings, and then we move on to the teacher-led stuff. Where, frankly, that's just. No offense to what you and Jason are doing, but that's the best when people can look each other in the eye and say, "Hey, this is how it works. This is what you should be doing. Have you tried this?" It's kind of real talk, and this is kind of how you do it.
Well, we say sometimes the best PD is actually just the teachers on the hall.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Just a chance to talk about these things, whether it's common reading or here's a sample lesson or, kind of troubleshooting. I thought this lesson would work. It didn't, that kind of conversation. So I love the structure. I love the focus, getting to the core of it being faculty led, building led, faculty led, to have all the conversations you say you have. The question that I have and that we've heard from the community when you showed the calendar up there is if the structure's right or the numbers right. And so I was wondering if you could say it, just give us a little context about the number of PD days and the balance between full days and half days and kind of the rationale behind that. Is that okay?
Sure, I'm happy to start, but then I'll pass it over. Dr. Clinch, you probably have a little bit more historical knowledge of how
Sure.
it happened too. But I will say the structure that we have in place at the moment does work really well. And I think the emphasis on kind of the scale back, right? If we go backwards, I think is important. As we said, the teacher down the hall sometimes about PD, which is why we weigh heavily, right? We spend more time allowing our teachers to kind of dive in and facilitate PD for each other. And then when we scale back, right, the next amount should be the discipline based, right? Focused on the very specifics. Who are the kids in front of you? Who are the adults in front of you? How do we move forward? And then allowing us, and sometimes there are moments where I'm like, I don't know how we're going to be able to do this goal with 2 days, right? At the district level. But then I'm always so reminded that no matter what we do, our educators, administrators, educators, we're all educators, right? All of us are working together to blend these ideas moving forward because we're invested in what we've chosen to do. So I will say the structure that we have at the moment is a really nice way for us to be able to move forward. And we are able to we said it during a map presentation recently, right? We have high expectations of our district.
Yep.
And we are able to maintain and have those high expectations because we have high expectations of teachers, but we also do allow them time to learn and grow because that is it passes directly back to the classroom. I'll pass it over to you, Dr. Clinton.
Yeah, I mean, there's always discussion about half day versus full days. There's pros and cons to both. I mean, offering PD is more intense than being in a 4-hour school committee meeting. You know what happens after 2 hours of school committee meeting. It's hard to get the same focus and attention. But full days are good as well, as long as you have that variety and you know, opportunities for different activities, transition into different things, and also spending time together as staff, talking about what's important to them. One of the challenges that every school district has in the area of finding time. I mean, the common theme you've heard ever since you become a school committee member is what's our biggest challenge? We don't have enough time. So how do we carve out enough time to continue to support our teachers and have a positive impact in our classroom to keep moving forward with student learning? The challenge of a full day is that unless we can figure out a way through negotiation to not have to extend another day in the school year, it would cost us a full day of salaries, which is huge. So
Explain that. I'm not sure I understand that.
well, if we have a full PD day, it doesn't count as one of the mandated 182 days of instruction. So if we had another full PD day this year, we would have to pay teachers, staff for that day. And then they would also have to work another day to make up the 182 days. So it becomes very expensive, extremely expensive. So the challenge is, are there other alternatives in creating another full day PD day or 2 PD days without having that kind of additional cost to the district? It's actually cost prohibitive.
And I think the only other, if I can chime in one more thing, is that we're talking about embedded and ongoing, right? And so I think we don't ask our students, learn this entire unit in one day because it's all you have, right? And so allowing us to break it up allows us to then say, okay, right? So for example, on the 28th, Jason and I ended at a certain point and we said, okay, between now and November 2nd, we want you to look at the warm demander, we looked at quadrants, where are you, right? We did an activity with starting, stopping, maintaining. And so we said, okay, pick a couple of things that you either want to start, you want to stop, or you want to maintain. And so allowing to have that time to be actually do and practice and implement, and then come back together and just reflect, how did it go, right? So there's that piece to it too, that it's just something to consider, right? There's lots of ways we can do things. I think we can be pretty flexible, but it's just to keep in mind.
Thank you.
So my thoughts are, thank you for the presentation. I think you did a nice job of walking us through what takes place over the course of the year. And no doubt, I think we do a good job with PD. And I think it's actually, it almost sounds like it's part of our Littleton culture. like if you came from somewhere else, you're like, wow, Littleton does a lot of PD and I get a lot out of this. My questions really become about like how much PD becomes appropriate. Because it is the number one complaint that I hear from residents, especially since my kids are younger. And I'm hearing a lot of those voices. Oh my God, like how did we end up with 12 half days? What could possibly go on? And you've given us a good idea of what goes on, but if we gave you 8 half days or 6 half days, would it be just as impactful? Because it's very difficult for us school committee members, I think, to measure the success of 12 half days versus 8 or 6. So just something to, I suppose, keep in mind, because when we go out to hire a teacher, I think we try to do a very good job of securing some really nice talent. Massachusetts has high standards for teaching. I think we expect them to have a master's level at some point in time very quickly. So these aren't uneducated people that need a ton of professional development, and they're coming in some of the highest educated K-12 teachers in the nation. And then we're layering this on top. And every 3 hours out of the classroom is 3 hours that the 20 something kids aren't getting instruction. And especially just coming off the tails of a couple interrupted school years. I mean, I know at my own house, kids are behind, and I know that's across the district. So I'm thrilled that we're doing yoga and that the teachers are signing up for it. I'm just not sure how much meat and potatoes that is trying to get everybody caught up. So
can I just talk about it, just because I don't want to discredit the educators who are doing the yoga.
me neither.
It's a
It was
program,
just,
it's an FPL program that they actually.
I understand that.
It's
Yeah.
actually it's evidence-based. It's actually a fantastic program that they do. And so it's tied into, yes, they do yoga moves, but it's also teaching, especially, I mean, what you just mentioned the past couple of years, right? Our students have been through a lot. And so it's teaching our students coping mechanisms of, I'm starting to feel anxious and stressed. Well, I did balloon breathing last week, right? So I'm going to think about that card and what does that look like? I'm going to put my hand on my belly. I'm going to feel the balloon, right? So it's teaching, it's not teaching math skills, right? It's not teaching reading skills, it's not teaching that academics, but it's teaching the coping mechanisms and social emotional learning, which I think is what we have seen a great impact from the pandemic on, right? And I think the only other thing that I would say is that we have fantastic staff.
Mhm.
Our students change frequently, yearly, monthly, daily,
Sure.
right? And so a variety of things happen. And so I would even say that when I graduated college and started in the classroom, I'm a very different educator now than I was then. And I'm a different educator now because I've worked with so many different students throughout different stages, right? I was only able to do that because of how I was able to develop myself professionally as part of the district, but then also personally, because we all know we all do things on our own too, right? To develop personally. And so that's the one thing I would just say is that we just need to be aware that education is constantly evolving, right? It's like science and medication. It's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And so I think we just need to make sure that we are aware of that for our educators and providing them the time, space, and ability to learn about those changes. I hear what you're saying with how many days, whatnot, but I think it's just important that we acknowledge that it's a constantly changing field and we just need to allow for us to be up to date. At some point, we could become outdated very quickly if we don't allow for that to happen.
And there's a huge difference between a scholar and a scholar practitioner. And when students graduate with their education degree, their bachelor's degree and master's degree, it's heavy on the scholar component. And then we transition into more of a practitioner component. I don't want, I'm going to equate this to something I don't very seldom do, but when you look at people that are picking up a trade, for example, they spend a lot of time in the practitioner phase as they're being educated. Whereas in degrees that many degrees, including teaching degrees, it's very heavily on the scholarly component for a number of years. And there are some practitioner components in there, but part of becoming an effective teacher is spending way more time in that practitioner domain as they grow as a teacher within the district. Hope that makes sense.
It does. And I'm all, like, let me just backtrack. I mean, I'm all for professional development. I think it's absolutely critical that we have professional development. That being said, I'd like us to continue to take a close look at how we deliver professional development. And is there another strategy, like Brad possibly mentioned, where we wouldn't have 12 half days? And then my other follow-up question was, because we kind of went through the 12 half days plus the one day, the one full day before, and then the one full day during election day. But the staff is allowed to like up to $2,000 of professional development that could be sort of I don't want to say, I don't know what the word would be, but self-initiated.
Yeah.
Self-identified, yes.
Yeah, self-identified. So I mean, there's a gigantic opportunity there.
Yeah.
And then I also believe that there's professional development taking place on the 180-day calendar where teachers are getting pulled out of the classroom to go to workshops or get the math curriculum, get the Lucy Calkins thing. Like that's also taking place in addition to what we went through tonight, right? So when you start to add it all up, it's like I start to think about the kids a little bit too, and not just how good can the staff be. So
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, because the kids are at the center of what we do.
Yeah.
Right, that's why we are all in this room tonight.
right,
Without that,
it's about the kids, sure.
100% about the kids. So I think that when we're considering these things, I think as long as we can all come back to, is this what's best for kids?
Mhm.
And if we're able to comfortably say yes to that, then I think,
That's the end of the story, sure.
then I
Yeah,
think we're in a good spot. That to me, at least that to me is that's my meter.
Well, the other component too is if we're focusing on professional development as much as we do, is it making a difference? And if we started looking at data and saying, well, our system isn't moving forward like we expect it to move forward, we would have to take a deeper dive into exactly what you're talking about. Have we overcompensated with too much PD and not enough instructional time? We think about that all the time. So
right.
and that's something that needs to be an ongoing conversation.
And some of that might be intangibles too, like you don't lose the staff because they just love it here because they get all this
Exactly.
that warm fuzzy PD stuff. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is it MCAS scores? Is it graduation rates? Is it college the kids are getting into? I mean, that we do have to sort of benchmark this somehow to try to figure out if what we're doing is effective. And
Can I piggyback a little bit on what you're saying, especially from what we're hearing from the communities? We have kind of like three, obviously 3 different groups that we have to try to accommodate. You guys need this PD. I can see the value in what you guys are working on. And then we have the kids who, from parents and from the community that we hear, they're not getting a lot of endurance in school. There's very few weeks that they're actually in school, a full week with holidays, with half days, vacations. They just don't have that like endurance and longevity in school because they are taken out of school a lot for very important reasons. And then we have parents who are trying to navigate through kind of an inconsistent schedule constantly. And I think that's what we hear a lot of is just, it's hard for parents to figure out childcare when it isn't a constant. Like when I was in school, it was every other Wednesday wasn't happening. We kind of figure out a schedule with caretakers or with activities or something. So I just feel like they have to like strike that balance between what the teachers need and what the students need and what the parents need from us. And I don't know if this is necessarily it. Like Justin said, like I feel like it's something that if we can try to work on or gauge what we're measuring success by, because obviously we're successful at it because the kids are doing great, the teachers are doing great. It's obviously working, but do we have to be up here or can we take it down a notch so that it works a little bit better for the collective? And I think that's just something to definitely consider because we hear it all the time. We hear it all the time. It's the biggest gripe.
at least 12 times a year.
I think
Times everybody that we see that day. Yep.
Can you
Sure.
guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Go ahead, Jen.
yeah, oh no, I'll just agree with Stacy and Justin, what you guys have said, and Brad. I mean, I think it would be really good to take a look at whether there's a better way to do this. And I think a good start would be, I don't know if anyone's done this yet, but to look at the surrounding towns and other towns around and understand how they're doing it. So what, what number of PD days are they negotiated? Is it anywhere close to what we have? How are they dealing with it? Like Justin said, if you come in from another town, I mean, you're totally shocked by the number of half day Wednesdays and now Fridays. So it'd be really good to get some data on how other towns are handling this. If they do have the same number of PD days, how are they breaking it out? I totally get the not being able to take off a full day because it doesn't count and we'll be in July before you know it. But there've got to be some other ways to deliver this information, which I agree with everybody is great. And you're all doing a great job with it, but would love to see some alternatives.
We have some of that. We've done some of that research. Happy to bring that forward at, when you're ready to dive deeper into that conversation.
And
Thank you.
and
Yeah.
that's a great concept. We need to be cognizant of what other districts are doing, but we're leaders. We lead the way. Our district now is knowing for leading. And it's okay picking up other practices in districts, but we want our own way that's working very well. So there's a balance there too. We're always thinking of other ways we can do this. And as you know, it all affects contracting. We don't have the freedom without negotiating to do some of the things we would probably do. So, we're cognizant of the time that our students are out of the classroom. And, at this point in time, we feel that it's certainly paid off in terms of what our students are getting for skill sets and teachers and student learning. But there are always ways to figure out if we can do this differently. And again, we don't have the freedom that sometimes we would like to have, because this is all tied to working conditions as well, as you all know.
Maybe final thing, is there any way for some of these half days, talking about you guys talking about a lot of really great themes for the students and obviously incorporating them into the classroom, but is there anything that the students can get involved with on these half days that counts towards their curriculum hours, that also integrates some of this stuff, some of this cultural stuff that we're working, whether it be like we did with my guys, we did like the Ooch seminars, like something like that was like, which was just like this really amazing thing that I'm like, man, I wish that the kids were required to do this because it was so great for them, but it was on a volunteer basis. Is there any programs that we can incorporate into maybe some of these half days that counts towards the school days for the kids, but it's like kind of a big group thing?
We could partner with Park and Rec, but I think there needs to be a bit of a clarification here. Even though we have those half days, we still meet, especially we're over the time on learning requirements for the year.
Okay. So
We have specific numbers of hours.
But we should be over, we have to meet it, and
Right.
therefore we should be over it, because,
Right. But we're
but
not.
we're not way over the time on learning minimum requirement. And
We're meeting them over, which I think is a very important point, because some people may think that we're not meeting those requirements because of the half days. We have to make those hours up in the first school day.
yeah,
So these are counting as full days, even though the kids are.
Right. And we don't get a break for the time on learning requirements because we're doing PD.
Right.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, no one approaches me saying, I don't think you guys are meeting the time on learning requirement. They approach me saying, what's with all the half days? And when we look at the time on learning, we kind of just cross over the threshold, and we cross over it by, I don't know, 3-5% or something. I would be curious to look at what other districts around us, like the perennial top 25 districts, are doing in terms of their time on learning requirements, to see if they do have the kids in the classroom for an extra, I don't know what it is, 15 hours a year or something like that, because that could be impactful.
I think some of it too is actually what you said, Stacy, like even if there's 12 Wednesdays, I never know which ones they are. It's always a surprise. Is it this Wednesday? Is it next Wednesday? Like
But the little guys, they
the
really.
calendar is like on the fridge and I look at it every morning because I'm scared. And so if there's some like every first Wednesday, you know what I mean? Like some consistent fear, like I'm not gonna pick up my kid at
Oh, you're
4:30.
right on.
Yeah, I've done that. So just the predictability or the consistency of when they are might also help. That because like care, like you said too, it's like the first Wednesday, then grandma knows that's when she's coming or whatever, you know what I mean? And right now it's like, and I know holidays throw that out, but like just like trying to keep track of November, you know, and the PD day and the conference day, and it's like, that's what I mean every day, the fear of like, am I missing something today?
Yeah.
So I think consistency.
Yeah, we can re-examine that.
We used to.
Yeah.
As much as we could. We have requests to move away with. So,
Yeah, could help Park and Rec kind of figure out programs too, if
Sure.
there's some consistency there, they can put together some programs there. Yeah, something you guys are open again, so that's great to hear that you're receptive to what we hear all the time, so that's great. We don't want to take away that time, but I feel like.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Because we were talking about measures of success of PD and we were citing graduation rates and college acceptance rates and types of colleges and stuff. But we began the conversation by talking about school culture. And I think that's a way, like climate studies, how comfortable our kids feel. There are ways, I guess there may be often softer metrics to measure how successful and how impactful these are. It's not only, I mean, and you weren't saying that, but I'm just saying it's, we as a committee have put a lot of emphasis on social emotional learning and supporting our kids and mental health and all these things. The focus that y'all have for your PD seems to be supporting those goals as well. And I just, as we're talking about ways that this impacts our schools and our students, I just wanted to note that as well.
Right.
I think teacher retention,
Teacher.
what did you mention,
Yeah.
right? And it's also another big indicator.
I'll just piggyback on that. I think the half days, like, those actually cause stress in the families. Like the parents are stressed on half days, the kids are stressed on half days. What am I doing after school? It's like school's a safe place. School's a nurturing environment. Everyone, you know, not everyone, but the vast majority of kids love school. You guys are doing a great job. And when they're not in school, you know, they're with grandma or they're with the kids down the street or mom and dad are trying to work from home. They're in front of a television. Like
Wait for mom to pick her up.
the alternative for the child is not as good. You know, they'd rather be in school. They'd have a better experience for those 3 hours being in school. So while you're working on improving their emotional health, what you're actually doing is putting them in a situation where they might not be in the greatest situation. On all those days that they're out. So it's of course, there's going to be some pros and cons, but it doesn't work for everybody. We good on this one?
And
Thank you.
you know this, but most of us have lived those days as well as parents.
Yeah.
And, being in charge of districts and having PD days with my own kids in school and my wife in another district with different PD days, I've experienced that
Yeah.
many times.
I'm an educator too. I have my own.
Exactly, yeah. It's a great discussion.
All right, we're going to circle back to the first presentation and just of note, the second presentation, the athletic update is going to be moved to a different evening. So this will wrap up presentations for the evening. We've got advanced placement testing. High school administration will review the 2022 AP assessment results. Welcome, Dr. Harrington.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Mike Lynn gives his regards. He's over at Alumni Field. I'm cheering on the Bill soccer team tonight.
Gotcha.
So we have, strong participation, strong performance results to present to you tonight for AP. And the test was given in May 2022. Just to remind folks at home and school committee members, these are the current list of courses at LHS. These are the courses we actually provide within the building. There's a number of courses that are available to students online through Virtual High School and some other online versions. But through Virtual High School is our primary source of courses. So, say a student wants to take AP English language or some other AP course, or AP European history that we don't currently offer, or world geography. They're available to students take those and they study for the test. And sometimes those results get credited to us too, because a lot of our students who do study on their own are highly motivated and do quite well. Next slide, please. Subjects where students took the 2022 AP exams. You can see the wide variety there. And you'll see some of them noted as courses that we don't necessarily offer right now at the high school. We had outstanding performance in AP drawing by one of our students. Catherine McDonough got a perfect score.
Wow.
So we'll be releasing it.
Were those on display at the outside the theater?
Yeah, some of her work has been featured at our show. So she was one of about just over 300 students in the world to get perfect score. Catherine McDonough, so shout out to her. Congratulations on her fine performance. So that's really unique. Every guy got a letter from the college board, head of testing to say if the students deserve special recognitions, like technology groups tonight.
All right.
The number of students taking AP exams, we gave you this table, so I guess at some point, maybe a long history here, so we can, it even goes before 2013, we've been tracking this in a table format for you, so you can see some of the growth over time, some of the fluctuations. You can see even some of the accounting for the last 2 years and how different that was. And there are enrollment differences. There's sometimes students who don't participate for one reason or another. We have seen more students taking AP courses. This was a trend we noticed about 10 or 12 years ago. For the experience of it, because the parents felt that they'd be better prepared for college level curriculum, even if they didn't anticipate or plan on taking the test. Most of our students do kind of nudge to take the test, but some students don't expect to get a 3 or better, which is 3 is what we're striving for, to get a 3, 4, 5. But a lot of our students have scored in some courses, like especially if it's a new course. Sometimes we get a 1 or 2, but they had the experience of taking college level curriculum. So next slide, please.
So we encourage but don't require the test for most of our
It
classes?
depends on the situation on each individual student. I think most of our teachers really strongly encourage it. If a student ultimately said that they don't want to take the test, we would held it to. There's a fee involved and everything like that. Would support them if cost is not an issue. We have a fund for that at the high school. They can use from our college board account that we use to pay proctors, but we would certainly pay for a student who was challenged to, by the fee or anything like that. This slide or table here shows you the number of percentage of exams at each AP score level. Please note that the results include students who took multiple exams, and that's quite common for us. The astounding thing is the number of students who scored 5. I mean, that left off the page at age. So, wow, and we'll show you that table, the graph one in an upcoming slide. 75. The exams, some 75 exams. Some of those kids are getting, well, that could be one kid who's got 3 5s. And I won't mention any names, but that does happen. So that's a nice. Just go to the up again. Sorry. Yeah, just the students who scored a 3 or better. Against the mark that we're striving for is for students to score a 3, because the vast majority of colleges will accept college credit if you get a 3 or better. There are some colleges, I note this at every presentation each year, particularly strong engineering programs, that if you get an outstanding score on calculus, took AP calculus, they're still going to have you take their calculus, but you'll be better for it because you take it. You'll be better prepared, obviously, if you have this experience, and obviously you show the proficiency with it, but they want you to learn that they have to teach it in their particular program. Next slide, please. Thanks, Steve. Again, this is just a way of looking at the data in a different format. The number of percentage of exams in each AP. Again, crossing a time span. I have to adjust some of those columns over the years go by. They can get a little dense. We compare 2021 to 2022. You can see the differences there at each score level. Nice to see that we had, I think, more exams taken this year, a higher percentage scoring 3 or better. That's not really surprising given what the last couple of years were like. So go to the next slide, please. This is difficult to see perhaps from where you're at, but you have it right on your desktop or your laptop. The number of exams at each AP score level, and you can see that 75 really standing out. But it's also worth noting the number of students who scored 4s too, and 3s. So it's a high percentage for the number of exams that were taken. So congratulations to all our students and faculty who work so hard to achieve these results. It takes a lot of work and effort. Congratulations. Next slide, please. And so just different ways of showing the data, number and percentage students with 1 or more scores, 3 or better. That's nice to see. In 2022, we had 87 AP students with a score of 3 or better.
And those are spread out sophomore, junior, senior?
Yeah. And most of the kids, as you know, will take a junior, senior. Yeah. Occasionally we'll have a little precocious sophomore that will want to challenge himself, or he's really capable. We need to get out of their way and let them challenge himself. So Next slide. AP scholars, I've been reporting this data out. Sometimes we do a press release on this. It's always fun to report that our students are recognized nationally by the College Board. And this is a nice thing for them to share with on their college applications as part of their experience. That, it certainly helps with their admissions. If we talked about that earlier. To be noted as an AP scholar, either with honor or distinction. Next slide, please. Gives the criteria there. For folks that they've had a chance that they can see it at home and you have it in your packet. Next slide. So our AP scholars continues to have an outstanding track record here going back years of number of kids that get recognized by the College Board. And didn't quite make that 34 big enough there. It was supposed to be bold. It's a lot of stories, a lot of sequence. We had 32 in 2021. We've had some years that are just phenomenal. You can see in 2019, 42. I think there's one thing about this recognition though, and I'm not sure if they're going to discontinue entirely by the College Board. It sort of puts, it's about the number of tests you take. And sometimes it's an unnecessary pressure that students feel to take as many APs as possible. In fact, some schools have acknowledged this at previous school committee meetings that when I make this presentation, that some schools have a limit on the number of AP courses you can take because of the level of stress and strain the kids put them on, that it's raced really nowhere. Just challenge yourself, enjoy high school too, and have a couple of APs. I certainly have, as a parent, have emphasized that with my own children. And I would say that I would recommend that to other parents that you don't have to take 7. We had a kid like on his own, go and like study, get the book and prepare. I mean, it was a really unique student who did exceptionally well with all these AP courses he took that weren't even offered by our high school. But I see it every year. I saw a request just this year from several parents to get into an additional AP where the kid already had 3 solid challenging AP courses to take a 4th or 5th. Enough's enough at some point. Hey, it's okay, you'll be all right. You don't need that 5th AP course or 4th. So it's always a caution because we have some kids and parents, I'll speak for the students themselves who really feel like, I got this, I can challenge myself, I can handle this. And in many cases they can. So we have to look at each individual case.
How much of that is driven, do you think, by their understanding of what highly selective colleges want?
A lot of it, I think, is what their perception of the college. I think the colleges are trying to adjust that perception, or they say that they want well-rounded students, or they want students who have some unique, sustained interest in something. There's been a few books written in the past couple of years about how the college admission process works, and that actually reminds me to send out the links to these various schools if parents are interested in learning more about it. I've read a couple of them over the last 2 summers. It's been really interesting how it's not all about AP courses. It's about having something unique you can say about yourself. It's not necessarily about your essay. There's a lot of different things that go into the admissions process. And a lot of times it's a crapshoot because there's so many, we know kids who have taken all these AP courses, valedictorians, top 10, top 20 in their class, and don't get admitted to that selected college, whether it be Ivy or not, or school that is considered Ivy League tier. They don't get admitted because, and they worked, and the frustration is extraordinary for some of those kids and disappointment. So we try to manage those expectations. We also want them to enjoy the learning as we talk so much about.
So I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but you said we try to manage those expectations. Is that at the principal, assistant principal level? Is that the
Guidance
counseling?
council level, it's principal, assistant principal level, it's the teacher level as well. It's all of us in this together, trying to look out for the best interests of kids. We want them to stretch themselves, to challenge themselves, but not get so caught up in the college race, because in many cases, as it's a lot of that, it's not worth it. And that's certainly being bumped more and more as I see in the media, as I read people start to question the ROI on college. At what point is there a point of diminishing return in terms of the amount of time put into getting to the school, and will you actually recoup the benefits of actually going to that school when you come out employed? So that's a whole other, I think, presentation. Next. Summary notes. So 81% of our students scored at least 3 on one AP exam. This was a little bit different, so each cohort, but it's within, like, 5 percentage points or something. A graduating class scored 3 or higher on an exam at least once. Some of that can come from, I imagine if you look at those kids, they're gonna really do well in classes they specialize, but they took that extra AP that they got the 2 on because they wanted to have the experience, so they wanted to. They also, the other thing we have to think about at our school and other schools that are like us, we our GPA is weighted, so we get higher quality points for taking AP courses, so that incentivizes our students. If they're really interested in ranking high in the class, we don't report ranking to colleges, but if they really want to be the valedictorian or salutatorian, they are incentivized to take more APs because they get more quality points calculated to their GPA. So that might be a conversation for us as a school council and school leadership to take a look at in the future. But right now it works for us. We seem to be okay.
Did you say class rank is not on their transcript?
And no, we don't report that to colleges,
Okay.
class rank. In fact, I think there might be sometimes where we report like deciles and stuff like that, but we don't say this kid's the number 1 kid in class. I mean, I know that if they say they're the valedictorian.
Sure, but you don't say like, this is the 34th kid in the class.
We don't report valedictorian, salutatory, we'll report it much later after the admissions process. So, 75 exams, as we noted earlier, scored a 5. I want to give a shout out and acknowledgement to fabulous AP calculus teacher, Julia Elmore. Her class, she had 2 sections of AP calculus, co-taught with Archie last year. So maybe Archie deserves a little credit for this too. But because 23 out of 29 of the students at 5. Thank you, Archie. Thank you, Julie. So maybe there's a study there for the benefit of having a dog. But it was pretty. She also, you're talking about professional development. One of the things that Julie does, and we've sponsored, the superintendent and I have supported this over the last few years. She goes to Kansas every year and grades the AP exams nationally. And she said that the by far the best professional development experience I've ever had. And it's been we've been the direct beneficiaries of her going off to Kansas for a couple of days and learning, mixing it up with all those other AP calculus teachers and having fun. I guess they do their thing together, grading tests.
Wild times.
Yeah, they have a good time together having Kansas.
I've done that and it's actually fun.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. They have fun together. And our AP Psych program, shout out to AP Psych as well. Great performance with number of 5s and AP Stats taught by Lauren Curran. Valerie Finnerty taught our AP Psych. I think it was her first year doing that last year. She did a good job with the number of 5s and AP Stats. Again, Laura Curran did a great job with the stats class. Very popular teacher because just to emphasize that, we added 2 sections of AP Stats and AP Psych this year. And hopefully we'll see a similar
For this year.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll see a similar outstanding performance. AP Computer Science A was added this year. I'm hopeful that we'll be really looking at our offerings in computer science and engineering in the future and seeing what we need to do to modify that. That's for a future presentation. So again, strong performance, strong participation. It's good to be here, to be able from this podium, be able to report that to you tonight. Because sometimes we don't have good news, but tonight I think we do.
Questions, comments? Beano?
And one comment, one question. My comment is that I really appreciate everything you were saying in terms of the balance and too many AP versus challenge. As a parent, it's something I look for in a district and look for moving out of the district because I think it's so important. And now there is just so much more pressure than when I went to high school.
Yeah.
And it's scary to think about. And so I really appreciate that as a leader, that's the vision and the culture that you created in that school. And my question is, and this might not be relevant for this topic, so feel free to say we're talking about this later, but AP versus dual enrollment.
Okay.
Because I didn't do dual enrollment when I was a high
Yeah,
schooler.
dual enrollment is something we're encouraging more and more of, particularly for students who aren't necessarily looking, not worried about gaining a GPA or going to the most selective colleges. Dual enrollment is still valuable for them if they are going to selective colleges, but it's particularly relevant for students who really know they want to go to UMass Amherst or the local state school, and they can do great by that too. Affordability, excellent, outstanding facilities and education in Massachusetts state college system. And if they take the dual enrollment course, because of our agreement with Middlesex Community College and a statewide program called the Commonwealth Compact, they will, if they get credit in high school for that, they get credit, they get college credit for it through state college. Some private college, I have to look, there might be a case here and here where there's a school that was really neat that did accept our dual enrollment credit without, I actually, that'd be a good thing for us to collect data on. Because I've heard here and there anecdotally, there's been some schools that have accepted the credit, particularly for a challenging course. But those, if you go to UMass Amherst, and you've taken 3 or 4 dual enrollment courses, UMass Amherst takes those credits, and you did them in high school. So we have a lot of kids, graduating with college credit. And I think, talk about leading the way, I think that's been something the superintendent has really pushed over the last 5 years. Is we're doing a lot more of that. Now, I want to just respond back to your early comment too about people who have moved into town from really competitive school districts. Some of them really near us. They find Littleton very refreshing around how we approach the academic intensity and push that sometimes is fostered, encouraged by the school system, but mostly by parents. And so it becomes a competition. We try to temper that down. So your kid's going to do just fine. Then you'll take a college prep course. You see, you back off a little bit. Senior year, you're doing fine. Just enjoy your experience, enjoy your senior year. And so we try to encourage kids to take electives, even if they're not for honors credit too.
So when a parent or a student is weighing between a dual enrollment course or AP course, the benefit of the AP course is the GPA, and a 3 or above may count for college credit.
Yeah.
The dual enrollment will count for college credit in state schools.
Yeah.
But it does not go into their GPA.
It does get, I have to look into that. I think the dual enrollment, I have to look at that specifically on how we calculate its GPA. There's been some discussion around that, whether it goes in as honors or college prep. I think we calculate it as honors credit. It does go in. I do know that our courses, especially courses that our teachers are adjunct faculty for, they've been approved, they've submitted the syllabus to Middlesex Community College for approval. Those courses definitely go into the GPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's dual enrollment at Middlesex and then.
And there's dual enrollment here at Littleton. And we have, you've seen me through the presentation.
Yeah.
I think it would have been the previous one with the number of dual enrollment courses.
Yeah.
It's quite extensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
I'm
growing.
years away from high school, but this is a new territory.
It may
Yeah.
not be
Change before you get there.
I actually teach this class
Be
at Salem High. And the way Salem High does that, well, if they count as an honors class, there's some weighting advantage. But the grade they
Yes.
get at the high school is also the grade they get in their college transcript. The danger of that is if they're doing kind of a C level kind of work but they get college credit. That also means they have a C on their college transcript now too. So there's a little jeopardy attaching because maybe the high school junior can do college level work, but 2 years from now would do A-level college work. And so it's not all roses. But I love the idea that we're challenging.
Some of our teachers have brought up some concerns around maybe why is this accepted by Middlesex Community College, because English 3 or something like that, or some other a French course when it's a high school course. And part of it is that the rigor of our courses. Our rigor of our courses I would contend that in a lot of cases actually exceed that of what's offered at the community college level. So that's what's happening is the community, you can get credit for the community college work. So why can't you get credit for a high school course that equates with that?
Stacey?
Yeah,
Sure.
first, I'll kind of echo what you said. I really love your attitude about the kids just like being able to enjoy high school and just assuring them that they're going to be just fine. What stuck out to me is kind of your comment about being a race to nowhere, because as adults, we can say that because we know, but to them, just to seniors, it's everything to them. It's their GPA, where they rank in their class and where they're going to be going
Right.
the following year. So I love that you're really encouraging them to just
Thank
kind
you.
of
I
like
appreciate
shop and chill. You got your whole life ahead of you. So the only question that I have for you is, the AP courses is what everyone's trying to do because they're trying to stand out amongst their peers for colleges, but you can't stand out when you're all on the same path. You're all kind of following that same road of trying to get all those AP classes. So do we have any like work study or internship
Yep,
programs?
so
or
that's the
anything
other- that's
within that?
That's underway. That growth is, I think that's going to be the big change. Basically, when your kids are.
Yeah.
All of you. Yeah, the next one coming up from Brad. It's gonna happen. It's already underway. Mass Hire is a program we've partnered with over the last 2 years. Our students are getting paid to be interns or work study
Yeah.
in different organizations or institutions and companies around here. It started out really small, the internship program, just sort of like, we had interns here, kids were interested in police officers, we did it with the fire department. But other town offices, that was really helpful, to have their partnership, other town businesses and stuff. In fact, we had a kid who he's a mechanic now, but he wanted to work in a shop. He was the first kid to get into a school, because he knew exactly, he was one school, it was in Ohio, and that's all I'm doing, and that's what I'm doing. And he accomplished that, now owns his own company. I think he's employed some of our students. So, or recent graduates. So that's, those internships, those work study opportunities, that's the huge area of growth, not just our high school, but other high schools, providing relevant real life world experiences and recognizing that the school experience in high school goes beyond the campus, goes beyond the walls. We can get kids places if they need transportation. In many cases, students, juniors and seniors are driving. We can give them adjusted schedules so that they can go and be interns somewhere. We have one of the fabulous things now, having been here a long time, is to see the number of kids that have graduated, who have become teachers. And there's something special going on here, because a lot of our kids that's interesting, I think, to me. I'd like to collect some data. How many of our kids at least the time we've hired a couple, they're on our faculty. I had them in school when they were freshmen, and they're on the high school faculty now. So, they're on Russell Street. There's one in Shaker Lane. I had her in school. I could go. So to me, that's a credit to our school systems district wide. But I also think that what I'm building up to is a lot of those kids have internship opportunities. So we have been sending more and more kids down to Russell Street. I don't know if we're sending any to the middle right now, but right now, the impact those kids have, particularly some of our boys from last year, they went down and worked with a couple of our rascals and I wouldn't leave out the grade, but some kids who were, very energetic, enthusiastic at recess in the earlier grades. And these boys, I guess, loved our students. The high school students were absolutely loved by the Russell Street faculty because of their influence on younger boys. So that mentoring is really beneficial for the town and the kids, but it also maybe it gets a kid to pause and say, maybe I do want to be a teacher. And some kids don't, they just want to do it for community, they get community service, but they are leaving the high school with permission and driving down to Russell Street every day, just about every day of the week to help out.
That's great.
So we went a little bit away from AP, but you learned a lot about the high school.
John, my only question, so I just want to make sure I'm interpreting the data correctly. So we had 107 students take AP exams, 210 tests. So on average,
How
people
many
took
210
exams. Yeah. So on average,
107 students.
everyone took 2, but of course somebody took 5 and
Yeah.
kids took 1.
Yeah. So really, high achievers really help,
And we probably
push
have
our averages up.
this occurs mostly junior, senior years, probably 240 kids.
We have data that breaks down from the college board by grade level, the performance level for each grade,
Okay.
but that's not in the report.
So I thought about 40-something% of kids in Littleton are taking AP.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
44 is kind of the rough
Yeah,
math
if
I
you say
came up with.
if you're working off of say 107 students and we're now 480 students
Yeah.
at the high school. But you're thinking of that number 400 kids in school. Last year, maybe 435.
Well, I'm thinking the freshmen aren't taking it.
Yeah.
Sophomores really aren't taking it.
Yeah, so your
Most of
percentage
junior,
goes up.
seniors. So yeah.
So just exclude a whole 100 kids or so.
Or
because
more.
They're freshmen.
Yeah.
And then, and the bulk of the sophomore class, so maybe 2. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You're right there.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a significant amount of the population
That took an AP course. They
Yes.
challenged themselves.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is you just need to take 1 or 2 courses. You don't need to take 7. You can just take 1 or 2 and it really pops on your college transcript that you
Sure.
challenge yourself.
I guess my question was, what's the average enrollment in some of these courses? If we're offering 14 courses, and there's
Well,
only 107 kids that took the exams. I mean, granted, some of the kids don't, they
We
take
have
the course,
courses
don't
that
take
are-
the
The
exam.
unique thing about our school, for whatever reason, we've been able to pull this off, need scheduling and things. we can have some really small AP courses, like AP Lit is on a bye-year this year. You know, we got
Okay.
acknowledgement from one of our students about that, but we didn't run it this year. And it's the first time we haven't run it in the years I've been here, but it'll be back next year. It was due to teacher constraints, teacher requests to have a certain number of courses, the students in the course. Teacher didn't want to do a hybrid. We've done that before, which is a novel scheduling thing where a teacher's willing to teach. I'll teach these 3 kids can have, I'll give them the AP curriculum, same course, same class time. And I'll give these kids the honors level.
Yeah.
But you know, the other kids will be challenged at a higher rate. So that one room schoolhouse to model. You know, we didn't have that this year in that course.
Okay.
Teacher really wasn't fond of it last year. So, and we decided not to do it this year. We have run AP Art, which is usually a very small class. Some of our AP languages have run small, like French, you know.
We're talking like
less than
3 or 4 kids.
We have had a class once that with 4 AP kids, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a very expensive section. And, you know, to run in terms of teacher allocation.
Sure.
FTE. So we have to be very selective about when we do that. But a lot of our courses are, you know, Julie Elmore had 2 sections with 29 kids. So
Yeah, that's phenomenal. That's great.
one not, you know, combined.
Yeah.
So yeah, some of our AP stats, I think, are over 30 kids
Good.
total.
Yeah, total, sure. The data to me indicates that we are digesting the curriculum and teaching it in such a way that our students are performing well. So I think we're doing a great
Teachers
job
are doing an
with,
excellent job in these courses, and the kids are responding to the quality of instruction and living up, you know, meeting those expectations.
Sure.
I think that's what this validates.
Yeah.
I think that grades are reflective of it too.
and then my challenge for, I guess, administration would be we've spent like, you know, maybe 40 minutes talking about these 44% of students who are doing really, really well. How can we spend 45 minutes talking about the 56% of students who aren't taking AP courses? So we probably want to take a deeper dive on those kids too, to make sure
Well, I
that,
think that will definitely be coming up for sure in December when we go over MCAS.
yeah, good. Good, but job well done, thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, good there, everybody? Excellent. All right, well, this is our second opportunity for interested citizens. We have a hand raised in the room. Perfect. You just come to the podium, name and address for the record, please. Hi.
My name is Wilson Kosa. I'm second chair. My address is 8 Scott Road. And first of all, I just want to thank everyone for inviting the CPAC to the event yesterday, the workshop evening, and let us have a table. Thank you. And also, we are very excited about the unified basketball team that they won their first game today. So that was wonderful. And we're very happy for Mr. Arnold's initiative and all the great work he's doing. They seem to be having a lot of fun. So. And then I just want to add about the half days. There is another 6 additional half days, which is parent teacher.
Sure.
Oh no, you have 18. Then I just want to address the AP exam. For kids with disability, I think it would be really helpful to have be part of an AP class and have the AP tests because it is a preview for them to go to college, and it might give them a higher opportunity to access college after high school. So when a kid is in high school and has an IEP, the school it has to follow the accommodations of the IEP, even if a child is part of an AP class, and until the kid is graduated. And so when I look at the statistics, we're looking for these numbers. There are, as far as I can see, there were no kids with disabilities that did any AP classes, and no kids that did any exams, of course. And that is that's concerning to me. I would wish that we could have a goal for the kids to participate, because even if the kids don't get a perfect score, it's important for them to be able to access what comes after it. Right. Um. Yeah, so my question is, if a kid, first of all, is it correct that no kid with disabilities have an AP class in that school year? That's my first question.
Lynn has her hand up.
We wouldn't know.
Well, it's on the,
I can be in an AP class and have a disability and not be identified and not be on an IEP.
on the DESI statistics overviews, you get all these numbers that were referred to today. But there's also subcategories where it's specified if the kid has a disability.
Identified.
You can search on it and you'll get the number of kids.
So when you're saying,
Supposed disability.
no, but just, are you saying you're referring to kids with disabilities as kids with 504 IEP plans?
I don't know how DESI.
Okay,
Groups is, but that's on the DESI.
That's sort of then they're identified as a disability, means they're eligible, and they are on an IEP. So a senior could have a generalized anxiety disorder and take an eating course and not be on an IEP, and they would not, it
Would show as,
right, as not,
Yeah.
not identified.
Well, okay, so we are saying that no child with
On an IEP.
on an IEP takes an AP class in Littleton High School. That's what.
I don't know.
we'd have to, I guess we could double check and try to get back to you.
Right, but that's what it looks like.
Okay.
That's what DESI is reporting, right? And I don't know if kid with disability means only IEP or if it means kids with IEPs and 504s. I would think it's both of those, but I don't know that for sure. So the high school is bound by federal laws that they must honor accommodations in the IEP in the high school, also in the AP class. But when the kid then gets to college, those accommodations aren't necessarily followed, right? Sometimes the kid gets to college, they can bring a neuropsych and the college can decide, or the teacher can decide to implement some of those accommodations, but it's not a given. So my question is, if you have a child with a disability in an AP class, how does Littleton encourage, well, how is accommodation seen also in light of the transition to college? I know you have to follow the IEP, but at the same time, if you want to prepare a student for college, you might want to prepare them that there will be a transition, that it's not, school is not going to follow the IEP the same way the high school did. And does Littleton encourage kids with disability to take AP classes? Because one thing I see when I look at the state results of kids with disabilities taking the AP class is that very few of them take the AP exam several times. They might take it once, but that's it. And what that tells me is that, and what I know is that they need more encouragement to dare to take these things several times, right? And not be discouraged. So is that something that is thought about? Yeah, how does it see these things? Thank you.
Thanks.
can I
You may.
just address, I don't think students are able to take the same AP exam multiple times. So if I'm a student, and I'm taking AP US history, I take it in May, and that is my bite of that apple. So I think that's a separate question. If these, I think we need to investigate the statistics. If it's true that we don't have any students, I'd be surprised if there were no students who have IEPs and 504s who would want to take AP classes.
That was what to take from?
I'd be surprised if we don't have any that want to. And so if I would like us as to,
I would be too.
I'll just say I'm aware of students with generalized anxiety issues and other disabilities or diagnoses who have taken AP classes. I know this. Yeah, I'm just saying that we need to investigate what these statistics actually tell us and see if it reveals a pattern. And
I'm happy.
thank you for bringing this. This is what I'm saying.
As CPAC, we're happy to provide you with overviews if there's anything.
Great. Thank you.
We do have students with 504s and IEPs that have taken dual enrollment classes. Which are high caliber.
Gotcha. Okay, no hands raised at home and nothing else here. We'll move through subcommittee reports, the NBC. No report. Budget subcommittee has a meeting scheduled for
I think it's November 9th is what we're trying to set it up.
that Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, November 9th, we will post full agenda for that, so looking forward to that. School start time update committee.
Yeah, school start time committee has been busy. Thank you, Dorothy, for helping us send out that email. So hopefully you all saw earlier this week. The surveys have started to come in. I want to say we have almost 600, maybe by now more. I haven't looked in a few hours. So really, really positive response. A lot of families, a lot of staff, and some students. So want to see want to see more encouragement from the student perspective too. But really, really interesting data. Excited to share with you all on November 17th and excited to hear from the community on November 10th. And all of that data will also be part of the November 17th presentation.
I should know this. Where's the November 10th meeting? It's here in this room.
At
Okay,
7
okay,
o'clock.
great, thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. Great. Shaker Lane Building Committee update.
No updates.
Nothing. We're
Perfect.
still trying to get together.
Policy Subcommittee.
Nothing to report.
And is there an additional CPAC update? We kind of heard.
CPAC, if there are upcoming meetings we want to talk about, I will say as a CPAC rep, I thought we had a really productive meeting. What we started to do with the CPAC leadership and Lynn Snow's office and the school committee rep is starting to have regular meetings, I think 3 or 4 throughout the year to get together in a room and talk. And I thought it was had a really productive, cordial meeting, and I'm glad we're doing that. I think it'll open up lines of communication.
Yeah, no, it was great. Thank you to you and for meeting with us. So what we decided at the meeting was that on the 10th of January, we will have a panel of educators, staff, that will meet with parents. Will be invited to meet with parents to answer questions. So we're in the planning stages of that.
And then we'll do a survey out to the staff to see which of our staff are interested in wanting to participate. And hopefully we'll get
Yeah. And then on the 17th of January, we are meeting with Littleton is doing tiered focus monitoring in February, I believe. So there will be a parent meet with the tiered focus monitoring representative and to tell parents what that is about and to ask them. And there will be a survey to parents also where they can report not report but to share information about their kids' learning piece. But I also say about the things about the AP exam, I had a lot of questions there. I don't know how, I didn't hear any answers to my questions. So how would I get answers to the questions I had?
Why don't
You guys will,
we'll respond to you through email.
okay, thank you so much.
All right, so there's that meeting that was discussed November 10th for the school start time, public forum here. Our next school committee meeting is November 17th here as well. Includes the agenda. Got the motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Austin, seconded by Ms. Patel to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good night.
We need executive session or not?
Oh, we didn't, I'm sorry, we didn't even executive session.
Glad you changed your mind.
We don't.
Oh, okay.
We should.
Yeah, let's do that again. So let's try this again. Dorothy gave me the word for word, but I don't have it in front of me, but I'll make the motion. I think, we're going to motion to adjourn with, for the purposes of contract negotiation with no intention to return to open session.
I'll second that.
Perfect. Motion made by McCarthy, seconded by Austin. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thanks all. Great.